Hello everybody, today we're going to take a look at the cage method. As some of you may know, there's lots of different 4x4 methods. There's reduction, yaw, K4, sandwich, just to name a few. But one that is not as common is the cage method. Now the cage method is kind of the method that comes with the Rubik's 4x4. There's a little instruction booklet that teaches a weird cage method. Now before we get into the cage method, I'd like to say that I do not recommend this method for speed solving, but just for solving for fun. Basically what the cage method is a concept of solving the centers last instead of first. So you'll have a cage all the way around, but none of the centers. Okay, so you have a scrambled 4x4, and I'm not going to be going into detail about this. Solve the corners of the white layer, and then you solve all the edges. So the first phase in the cage method is solving a layer but without the centers. You can have the centers, but they don't need to be solved. And then the normal cage method, found on speedsolving.com on the wiki, solves these edges next, but what I do is I solve the opposite face, just like this. So you'll use the algorithms you know, solve the corners, so I oriented corners, and then permuted corners, and then you solve the edges by doing some setup moves. So I want this blue edge to go here, and you put it in like that. And then you have two opposite faces or layers like this, but without the centers. Then you solve these 4 edges like this, these 8 edges, the 4 edges. So this stage is similar to a 3x4, 3x3x4. So I'm not going into detail, like I said. So solve top layer, and then these. There you go. Now, after you solve those middle layer edges, now you have the cage, which is basically all the corners and all the edges solved. Everything is solved except the centers. Now to solve the centers, you just use a commutator known as the Nicholas to just keep swapping centers around until they're all solved. Again, I'm not going to go into detail with this, but I see 2 here, and I just swap those 2. And you just intuitively use the Nicholas to solve all the centers. So while I'm doing this, I want to find 2 centers that if they swap, then they'll both be solved. So here I see a blue on the white face and a white on the blue face. So if I swap these 2, I'll be solving 2 centers at once. There we go. And there you go. That is the cage method. Now it is pretty slow. I average about 1:10 with the reduction method, and on here I've done a few solves and gotten about 2 minutes and 30 seconds. So it is much slower, but I just use it every once in a while as a method for fun. So that is the cage method for the 4x4 cube, and that is what the cage method was made for and is still used for. Now I have taken the cage method and applied it to all the rest of the main cubes. So we'll go to 5x5. Okay, the cage method on the 5x5 is basically the same thing, except on a 5x5 there's the middle layer, edges, and the center pieces. That's really the only difference, and that will just take an extra step to solve. So again, solve the corners and then just intuitively solve the edges. And when you're doing this, you want to make sure that the white center is on the white side, so let's go ahead and do that. Yeah, center's in the right place is important, otherwise you'll get a weird parody. So there you go, there's one layer, and then you solve the opposite layer. So I oriented corners, and then permute corners. Now all the corners are solved. Now I want to solve these edges. And you can solve multiple ones at a time. See here I have 2 greens, I can put those in at the same time. Two reds. Okay, so there you go. Now you have 2 opposite layers. Now you want to solve these inner edges on the inner layers, but first you want to make sure the centers are in place, and you want to solve these middle edges first. Now what I do is I use setup moves, and then here I just set it up and then use a U-perm, a 3-edge cycle, and then undo the setup move. And you want to get the edges in their place. Oh good, okay. So these 2 are solved, and then these 2 need to be flipped. So, alright, oriented them, and then I'll have to put them in place. So just use the algorithms you know to solve these 4 edges, and then you continue solving like normal. And then all you have left are the centers. And on a 5x5 you can move blocks of centers at the same time. So here I have 2 yellows. I can put these up here at once. It's the same algorithm, just use multiple layers. And you just solve the centers. And there you go, that is the cage method on the 5x5. Now for the 6x6 and 7x7, they're just the same things as the 4x4 and 5x5, using just the same methods to solve like the middle layers, same thing for middle layer on 7x7. So if you can solve cage method on 4x4 and 5x5, you can do it on 6x6 and 7x7. It does just take a lot longer, and I have used cage on both of these, and it does take a significant longer time, but it is fun to experiment with and stuff. Now for the 2x2 and 3x3. The 2x2, there isn't really such thing as a cage method for 2x2 because it's really just layer by layer. Because if you look, there's no centers, so if you solve a layer, I just solve yellow, and then, so that's one layer, and then you solve the opposite layer, and you're done. So it's really just layer by layer on 2x2. So there's no really cage method for 2x2 because there's no centers. But on 3x3 there are centers, so there is a small cage method. So just solve a layer. Okay, so there you have a layer, and then you solve the opposite layer, so you want to orient corners on top. And then solve the edges using the same setup moves from before. There, and now you have the opposite layer. And then you just solve the inner layers with using the algorithms you know. So there we go, and yeah, that's the cage method on 3x3. So there you go, that is the cage method, and as you can tell, I didn't go into detail on the cage method. I just showed you the outline of the steps of the cage method. If you would like a tutorial on how to solve the 4x4 using the cage method, go to the moderator module on my channel and request it, a cage method tutorial for 4x4. Another place you can go is speedsolving.com/wiki. And you can find the cage method on there under big cubes and 4x4 methods. So there you go. I hope you enjoyed this video and you learned something out of it about the cage method. So thank you for watching and have a nice day.